Hey guys, I'll talk about CADL. This was a smaller trade, but I want to talk about this because I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting trade. It's an interesting trade in terms of the daily, and it's an interesting trade in terms of the price action, especially midday. Oops, that is green. Um, so anyway, the daily is that this is, a previous runner went up 1,000%, and then it's been on a multi-day down-only fade, you know, about 50, 60%, right? And these will have these bounce days, right? So a lot of shorts are told that, these bounce shorts are like really good shorts, right? Because like there's resistance levels and, usually when stocks go on second pushes like this, their push isn't anywhere as big as the initial push, which is true. But the problem is that shorts often get caught shorting these way too early. Um, Especially, it's very common for these types of stocks to have short traps, especially if there's good volume, right? If there's really good volume, right? So, these bounce plays on these bottomed out kind of previous runners can be incredibly strong, and we see this on super low float stocks can make float, especially floats under 1 million or 2 million, can make insane pushes even on these backside days. So I was kind of hoping for something like that. So I was bullish going into this trade because the pre-market volume was nice, increasing, consistent, was trading some pretty decent pre-market volume, and so you have like your classic increasing volume. It's breaking about, I think, about 400K per minute in the pre-market, which is nice to see. And we get a nice clean pullback to the 1 minute 20. And this was just kind of your standard 1 minute 20 short, 1 minute 20 long, right? Where it tests the 1 minute 20 multiple times. It holds on the 1 minute 20. New bids come in on the 1 minute 20, and you can long into the rotation. Now, I was actually a little bit afraid because the initial push didn't go, but that doesn't mean that the trade's over, right? I was long biased this trade because of the volume, because of the pullback, and because, this was only up 30%, 25, 30% on a stock that previously ran, 1,000%. So I'm thinking, a lot of times on these crazy runners, we saw this with places like TPSP, a couple of the penny runners. And the penny runners are slipping with TTOO. We've seen these stocks that make 1,000% moves have really aggressive backside plays, right? So it can actually be bullish if it's early in the move, if the gapping percentage isn't that high, if the volume's good. So I was really bullish kind of going into this. So it gave a lower high, but I decided to remain bullish going into it, and luckily it just came right back to the 1 minute 20. And I was actually a little bit afraid because right before market open they were pulling it back towards my average, and I'm like, oh man, please don't like rip and do do something like this, but luckily it just went straight up. So that was a little scary. I was ready to get out with the 9:30 market order if I needed to. But it went straight up, and then it started struggling as a $7 ask, and it's really common for $7. It's the fake whole dollar resistance. I made a whole video on fake whole dollar resistance, especially with this trading 1.5 million shares per minute, and the stock was only up 30%. So I was like, okay, maybe $7 is a pain. Let me put my risk at 620, and the reason I did that is because that's right where the 1 minute 50 was, and there were bids on the book there. So I was like, okay, I'll just risk that. And then it gave actually like a great 1 minute 50 long. If you weren't even long here, this was another great long signal. We'll see what they did on this, but it was another, like, it tested. They actually had an ask pushing it down, and then they pulled the ask. And when they pulled it, there's something very interesting on the tape is once they pulled the ask and it bounced off the 1 minute 50 again, you sometimes see on rigged initiations a bunch of orders will start going through the tape in between the ask and the bid. So these are the white orders. in between the ask and the bid, and a lot of times you'll see a bunch of rapid, like 1 to 3 to 5K orders, like start going through. And to me, I've seen that enough right where, I mean, you have to kind of understand structure and understand where this is likely to happen, because you could get easily faked out if you just read the tape all day. But given the 1 minute 50 pullback, given the $7 paint, given the the nice 1.5 million volume in market open, given the MA, it made sense why whatever algo is kind of moving this would suddenly start executing a bunch of orders to kind of push the stock up. In this case, so I actually re-longed. I was actually still in. This was only a partial. I added it back, sold where the long trap is, because you never know. I mean, this could easily be a fake 5-minute flag where it does this and it pulls, right? So fake initiation and pull. Could easily, you never know. So I always like to sell at least a piece of my long where the short, in my opinion, would be. And that would be on like some type of long trappy push. I sold some right at the 7 break because that's the key liquidity level. And then I saw them dumping into the bid, and I actually just got out the rest of my position because I'm like, I was really expecting $7 to hold and for it to rip, right? I was expecting this move here. This is where I was expecting this move. So I decided to get out as these lows and these bids were kind of getting taken out. But the rest of this video, I want to point out what kind of happened here and here, because we saw this on ADIL where, it's quite rare to get these midday pullbacks with these multi-hour soaks, usually somewhere under VWAP, right? So this would be VWAP. There's a lot of soaking, and a rotation. And I noticed that it happened on ADIL and it happened on CDAL today where, in my opinion, what's really important is the pullback structure, right? Look how aggressive this selling is. It's super hyper aggressive, right? So there's very little consolidation. They're just dumping through every single support level. They're dumping through the higher lows, and they brought it down right to the 1 minute 200, right? And you got to keep in mind that the reason I wasn't short biased going into this high day clear out, because I thought the volume was big enough to squeeze the stock, but also I wasn't short biased the high day clear out because the stock was only up like 35%, right? It's really not up a whole lot for a backside move on a previous 1,000% runner, right? So I really was not thinking short. I wasn't thinking short on a lot of plays today. We had 2 high IO biotech names, right? What were the 2 names today? It was RLYB and EWELIM. Like, look what ended up happening with both these charts. Like, we're going into end of day and they're both holding up. They're both holding. Like, look at this. So this is high IO biotech. Actually gave a very low float type of long trap pattern at market open. And look, this is what high IO stocks do, by the way. They just grind. The problem with these trades is not that they don't give nice patterns. It's where is support going to be? That's the problem with these trades. And a lot of times, support comes a lot quicker than if you're used to trading low floats, right? And then also people get baited the fact that these tend to be easy to borrow stocks and it costs like no money to get shares. They're available on every single broker and people get super hard baited and shorting these. And same with EWELIM. Granted, I actually did short this can. I couldn't help myself, but I did the smart thing and I took some profit on the VWAP crack and then I took the rest out on the rotation. So I made like a tiny bit of money. But yeah, like look at this. In low floats, this would go straight down. Hyper aggressive push towards high day. It pulls back, does a massive soak. It hits like 10 layers of ask, and this would fall straight down in low float land. This would go straight down. But in high IO biotech land, instead of massive long trap soak candle and fade, you get high day swipe. You get a pullback. You get a backside clear out, but then the backside clear out holds up. It starts to become zoom out. Like a lot of these plays get absorbed on longer time frames. And the people buying the stock aren't even looking at the 1 minute candle. They're not even looking at it. Rent, by the way, rent. perfect 1 minute 20 long, by the way. A little tangent here, but I wasn't looking at this at all until it was up halted, but I was like, wow, look at the volume, look at the push, look at the quick pullback, and there was a million bids on this thing. Not only were there bids here, there were bids all the way up this push. You could have longed sub 16 or right around 16 and held all the way to the up halt and all the way up here. Like, this is only after this crazy volatility came in, after the up halt, were the bids starting to get really thin. But I mean, yeah, it's annoying. The best two longs were actually MRIN yesterday and rent today. Just perfect long, literally perfect. I opened this, I was like, and then I looked at the book on this, I was like, oh man. But anyways, let's go back to ADL was also very interesting, but let's go back to CDAL. But yeah, so you get the aggressive pullback, and because it's nothing but selling and nothing but lower highs, it creates so much empty space to rotate back into. And I told my Discord, usually, say the stock went on like 100%, 200% push, and now we got this, painted VWAP resistance, lower high. This, on a much more extended ticker, is an A+ short. This is an A+ backside clear out. You get the first push, you get a low volume pullback, you short the second push, try to get it in the 670s here. Especially because there was zero bid follow-up on this entire push. 0 bids. And this would knife, crack these higher lows and fade if this was up 100, 200%. But the fact that this is, zoom out. Yeah, this is a bounce, right? We're bouncing off the 9 EMA on the daily, right? It has this big down-only pullback, so there's a lot of space to rotate back into because it's nothing but down-only. It's the first meaningful, good volume, right? And only up from the close. This was only up, at the bottom of this knife, the bottom of this pullback, the stock's only up 20%. Like, not even. It's up 20% of the day, like 18, 20%. So shorting here, the stock's only up 25, 26%, right? So the range is limited. This structure is potentially bullish, especially what we saw with, it's the same thing as ADIL, where aggressive down only can lead to, aggressive midday reclaims. And even though there's no bids on this push, what happened was they knifed this and then they put bids under here and they started stacking the bids to push it back up. Problem is, longing this midday is extremely difficult. But we'll look at the book super fast just to show you what I mean. Display. So here's that knife. Here's a VWAP clear out. No bids following it up. The knife, and then they start putting these 20, 30K bids down here to push it. They're walking these bids up to push it back up, and that leads to the squeeze. But yeah, we'll go to market open really fast. So this was the 1 minute 20 pullback right here. Test it once. When it tested here, there's no bid. The bids were down here, but there's no bid immediately at the 1 minute 20, so I didn't long it here. But they did another push. They pulled it back, and then they stacked the bids. This is where I long, because even though this is technically the second test of the 1 minute 20, I just didn't want to long it because the only bid is way down here, which is below the 1 minute 20. But now we get another push, get a pullback. And then the bid follow-up starts to come. Then the bids start to come. This is great. And then they did a classic little trick where they were walking. There was like 40,000 shares walking this down. But a big ask walking it down is not necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, it could be bullish as long as the MA and the bids that I'm expecting to hold. If the bids hold and this order eventually gets taken out, then I actually think it's really bullish, right? Because they're kind of pushing the stock down before initiating it back up. And then, yeah, they had this like little sell-off right before open. I was looking right at the 630 bid, never got broken, and then they just initiated it. But But yeah, here's the 1 minute 50. So they did actually a nice little long trap pattern here at high day. This is at 9:34 a.m. Sell off into aggressive push into seller, right? This is actually usually a great short. I was long here, and I'm like, man, once I saw this stall and I saw this pullback, I was like, I should be shorting this, but I was like, I'm bullish the overall structure, right? You know, if this type of move happened again on a play up 150, 200% near market open on a stock that went relatively straight up, it'd be great. It'd be A plus. It's great. It's a great short, but just in the context of this pattern in this chart, you know, I thought it was bullish. I didn't want to have that bearish bias because the daily and the gapping percentage and the volume and the structure made me have a bullish bias, even though this, you know, that's where you make the differentiations between when this pattern's an A plus short and when, you know, maybe it's not as good, right? So here's the 1 minute 50 bids. Pulls down one, tests it once, tests it twice. You could even potentially went long here, but then, you know, I wanted to be careful because usually I don't even add on second longs anyways, but here's what I mean. They have this ask. It pushes right to the 1 minute 50, and this right here is when they started all those orders through the white tape started, like right around 640 down here. You started getting, you're like, I saw that tape. And here's your potential long trap push. Actually, not a whole lot of bids following it up, so very scary. When I saw this knife, I was like, oh man, like if it comes and attacks the 630 level, I gotta get out. But luckily, they knifed it, popped it back up, and put 25,000 shares on the bid here and forced the stock. Look at this. Isn't this interesting? Isn't this really interesting? They forced 25,000 shares here. And then the moment the high day clear out happens, they pulled the bid, right? And then we get a fade, right? Isn't that interesting? So that could have been part of a, you know, if your thesis was high day clear out, that's a nice little signal, especially because it's the bid that forced the initiation. Also, with not a whole lot of bid follow-up, and the bid that forced the initiation gets pulled at the exact moment the high day clear out happens. Very interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, I wasn't shorting this. I even posted this to my Discord. I was like, you know, normally it was like right here. It's like normally this would be super bearish, right? Because we just cleared out the VWAP paint. And now we're getting, you know, you might get a second push. Here's your second push, pullback. Second, sometimes the second push breaks the previous high. Sometimes it hangs out right below it. You kind of have to make a decision. So this is interesting. This was an instantaneous, like 50,000 share dump right here. This is how the algo works. Isn't this crazy? This is right at 11:54. This is like they just, like algo just initiated, like, hey, we want to get down to this level, sell however many shares it takes to get down to this level, and they just sell like 50, 60,000 shares instantaneously, and it just goes straight down. And then they throw up the bids, and then they just started market ordering it, and yeah, just tons of traps and grindy. Actually, it's still trapping, it's still grindy, they're still throwing up bids, and that type of thing. But yeah, I just want to bring that up because, you know, these like this. Here's that huge soak into seller. So this cracked all the way down here, came all the way back up, and then went all the way back down. In a different chart, this is great, but in this chart, I didn't really care, right? In fact, I was reading the 1 minute 50 because what does this mean? It's a walk down to the 1 minute 50, and the 1 minute 50 is holding, right? And we have fake $7 resistance. We got high volume. We got a lot of empty space. I see it soaking. I see the ask getting pulled. I see the volume and the tape coming in, and I was able to catch that long. It wasn't huge. You know, I was hoping it would, you know, $7.5, $8, you know, but apparently rent was the play. If I wanted a crazy up-only squeeze, rent was the play. But and look at ADIL, by the way. ADIL had that $3 paint from yesterday. Look what they did. They pushed into the 290s, knifed it to the 1 minute 50, And they threw up, I'll show you, they threw up a, here. Here's the knife, right? Here's the knife. Look at this bid right here. That's, they put up a 40,000 share bid. They knifed it into a 40,000 share bid, and then they squeezed it right to high day, right? All the way up here, right? So, the volume was getting kind of thin down here, so I was a little afraid to long it, but this was, especially after this bounce, look at this. They put up the bids, they sell into those bids, and they have the 40K below it, and then they start rotating it. This rotation was super, super, super nice. That's the big brain long on this play. It's the second test of the 1 minute 50 with the bid absorption before the rotation on the manipulated stock. Crazy huge brain. But yeah. Also, I like this. You see this trick a lot, where it's like, you get an aggressive move towards highs or towards some key level. It moves up to 1 minute 9. They swipe down to the 1 minute 20, and they do this hard. You see a lot of these like 1 minute 20. This like 1 minute 9 swipes to the 1 minute 20 initiation. So it pulls back to the 1 minute 20, then they initiate it. I've seen that trick multiple times. Something to remember here. Look at this chart. I was like, by the way, I actually called out this bid prop again on a much higher volume name, especially on a not multi-day runner. This is a nice bid prop, short. I was actually calling out the bid prop. I said I didn't want to trade it because it was too thin, and the fact that it was a multi-day runner and somebody was probably soaking it. So I actually saw this dip, but I wasn't really surprised by any of this continuation. I didn't trade any of this. These thin, grindy, it's multi-day runner, which I consider bullish, and it went towards, look at this, like, this is above VWAP, and some of these candles are like 8,000 shares a minute, 11,000 shares a minute. It's AIDS volume. Don't short stocks that are trading above VWAP, trading like sub 10K candles. Okay, that's a piece of advice. You get price action like this, grindy BS that even if you somehow get, let's say you have the read and you get the candle, like look at this. Look how aggressive the selling is. Look how aggressive the selling is. Both of these highs got reclaimed on all this aggressive selling. Look how aggressive this selling is. How aggressive this selling is. How aggressive that selling is. It's just like, it's so ironic on a rig ticker. The more aggressive the selling is, the more likely any type of rotation is going to break previous resistance levels. So, anyways, that's it for today. There's nothing here that really made me crazy short biased. A lot of these names, like, the two biotech names and the CADL, backside bounce, and an ADIL, multi-day runner, I consider none of these I went in here thinking, I'm going to short the shit out of them. You know what I mean? So, anyways, that's it for today. Information down below about the Discord, and you have a good one. See ya.